Another step, take the cop.
True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been, and am. But why do you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven, all things in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily and calmly I tell you the whole tale. It is impossible to say when the idea first entered into my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Of object there was none. Of passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me, had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this, for he had the eye of a vulture, all pale blue with a film on it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. So, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the old man's life and rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. Should have seen how wisely I proceeded. Seen how with such caution, such foresight, I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, at just about midnight, I opened the door to his room. every night, at just about midnight, I turned the latch and opened his door, oh, so gently. And when I had an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed up, closed so that no light might shine through. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly. It took me a whole hour to move my head in the space far enough that I might see him as he lay upon the bed. Would a madman be so wise as this? And when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern, cautiously, so very cautiously. Cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the Bonjour. And this I did for 7 long nights, at about midnight. And always I found the eye closed, and so could not do the work. For it was not the old man that vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, as day broke, I entered boldly into the chamber and spoke to him courageously, calling him by name in a hearty tone and asking how he has passed the night. So you see, he would be a very profound old man indeed if he suspected that each night at midnight I looked in upon him as he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. The minute hand of a watch moves more swiftly than did mine. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph, for there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds and thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved upon the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. The chamber was pitch black with a thick darkness. I knew he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pressing it on, steadily, steadily. I had my head inside, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped on one of the tin fastenings, and the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's up there?" I stood quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I didn't move a muscle. And all the meanwhile, I didn't hear him lie down. He sat up in bed, listening, as I have done many a night, hearkening to the death watches on the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and knew it was a groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. It is the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when it is overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. For many a night, at about midnight, it welled up from my own bosom and deepened with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him. I knew that he lay awake ever since the first slight noise when he turned in the bed, and ever since his fears had grown upon him. He tried to fancy them causeless.
Oh, it's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor. Or it is merely a cricket, which has made a single chirp. Yes.
All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow forward and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of that shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily. Stealthily, I opened it until at length a simple, dull ray like the thread of a spider fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all pale blue, with a veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones. I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely on the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? I say now, there came to my ears a dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew this sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the drum stimulates the soldier to courage. Yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. Meanwhile, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder and louder. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, louder, I say, every moment. And now, at the dead hour of the night, in the dreaded silence of that old house, so strange a noise at this excited me to uncontrolled terror. Yet for some minutes I refrained and kept still. But the beating grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst. Then a new anxiety seized me. A neighbor would hear the sound. The old man's time had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and threw the heavy bed over him. I smiled gaily to see the deed so far done, yet for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. However, this did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length, it stopped. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. The eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no more when I describe to you the wise precautions I took for concealment of the body. First, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, the arms, and the legs. Then I took up 3 planks from the chamber floor and deposited all between the scantlings. Then I replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly that no human eye, not even his, would have detected anything was wrong. There was nothing to wash up. No stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I was too wary for this. A tub had caught all. When I made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, nearly dark as midnight. When the bell tolled the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 gentlemen who introduced themselves with all suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the office of the police, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. What had I to fear? I bade them welcome. The shriek, I said, had been my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I led my visitors all about the house. I bade them search well. At length, I led them to the chamber. I showed them his treasures secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and wished them here to rest from their fatigues. And in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, I put my chair on the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I cheerfully answered, they chatted of familiar things. But at length, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. Yet still they sat. Still they chatted. The ringing gained distinctness. It continued and gained distinctness. I talked more fluently to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness until at length I found the noise was not within my ears. No doubt now I grew very pale, but spoke more quickly and with a heightened voice, but the sound grew louder. What could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, but the officers heard it not. I spoke more quickly, more vehemently, but still the noise steadily increased. I paced to and fro with heavy strides, as though excited to a fury by the observations of the men. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I sat and grated it over the boards. Still the sound arose over all and steadily increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, they heard. They knew, they suspected, they were making a mockery of my horror. This, I thought, this, I think, anything was better than this torture. Anything was better than this derision. I could no longer tolerate their hypocritical smiles. I felt I must scream or